Alright, welcome back to another video lecture. Today we're going to talk about the principles of government is our topic today. Some of this is going to be very similar or review from our last video lecture on the types of government, but we're going to go a little more in depth and talk about how a country can become a country or how a state is a sovereign state. So some new vocabulary today. Remember to have your spiral notebook and be taking notes and ready for a quiz next class. Of course, we see here the U.S. Capitol, hopefully one of our field trips this year, and Mr. Bush and I's favorite constitutional scholar, the father of the U.S. Constitution, James Madison, also called Little Jimmy. He says if men were angels, no government would be necessary. Certainly, as we know, men are not angels, and therefore government is necessary. Alright, three things we will cover today. What is government and its powers? That's a review from the last video lecture. And then we're going to talk about the four characteristics of a state and the purpose of our government. Alright, first things. Remember, government affects you in countless ways. We have this discussion in class talking about your daily agenda and how the government is involved in almost every single step that you take in order to get to school. But beyond that, the government, of course, is going to protect against terrorist attacks, maintain the streets, punish people who do not follow the law, protect property, and a lot more. And remember, everything that the government does is public policy. Alright, so the government is what makes the public policy and enforces public policy. And if you remember from your last section of notes, that public policy is everything the government does. Okay? For example, it can be taxation, defense, education, crime, civil rights. So the fact that you have this for homework, that you need to pass government in order to get your diploma, that is public policy. Alright, the three kinds of power, we talked about this last time. We have the legislative power, the power to make laws, the executive power, the power to enforce laws, and judicial power, the power to interpret laws. Alright, and what the responsibilities and the duties and the powers of each of those different branches, of each of those different areas of government, those are all found in the Constitution. Alright, we'll start, when we start talking about the different branches, we'll start with Article 1 in the Constitution, which discusses the the legislative branch. Alright, the state. Now this seems kind of confusing because we're not talking about the state like the state of Virginia. We're talking about a state like an independent country. Okay? So a state is a body of people living in a defined territory, organized politically, and with the power to make and enforce law without the consent of any higher authority. So, you say, what in the world do you mean? Why is Virginia not a state? Virginia is not a state because it cannot enforce law without the consent of any higher authority. Certainly, Virginia has its own set of laws and is able to have some laws that differ than other states, but they cannot have a law that is like bigger than or without the consent of the national government. So even if Virginia wants to do certain things, they still have to abide by the laws of the federal or the national government, which makes it not an independent state. Alright, there are 194 states or countries in the whole world, each with characteristics of a state. These four characteristics are what you need to know. Population or people, territory or place, right, including borders that we know where, for example, the U.S. and Canada end and begin. And then sovereignty, which is the power, and government, which will make and enforce laws. Right, population. Size does not matter. You can have a country of 5 people. Or you can have a country of only 30,000 people like they have in San Marino, or all the way up to a country like China, which has 1.3 billion people. Okay, so the people are a citizen of that state. They identify with that state. Those people live there, were born there, and that's what makes them an independent state. All right, a state must also have territory, that land with recognized boundaries. Right, if you know where one country begins and another country ends, that means that is a legitimate, real state. Again, it can't be really small. It can't be really big, as long as it has recognized political boundaries. Right, sovereignty. This is the one that is the most difficult to understand, really. But it just basically means supreme power. All right, so again, one of my little tricks, the S for sovereignty means supreme. So if a country or a state can make laws without having to abide by any other laws, without having another country or another government have more power over them, then they have sovereignty, right? So each state has supreme and absolute power within its own territory and can decide its own foreign and domestic policies, all right? So if you are an independent state, that means that nobody else can tell you what you can and cannot do inside that country. So each of the United States does not have sovereignty. The United States has sovereignty, but the state of Virginia or the state of Maryland, they do not have sovereignty. Right? They are under the Constitution of the U.S. All right, what is government? We talked about this again last time. The government is the agency through which the state exerts its will and works to accomplish its goals. So, in order to be a state, you have to have a government. It can be organized in lots of different ways. We talked about those different types of government last time. But it has to have some kind of organization, right? Thomas Hobbes, one of the Enlightenment thinkers that we'll talk about in just a few weeks, he says, without government there would be a continual fear and danger of violent death, and life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. That's pretty intense. Right, so we're just talking about really what a country needs to be a country, what a state needs to be a sovereign state, and we're going to start talking in the next few class periods about the different philosophy that leads to the type of government that sovereign state chooses to have. Okay, major political ideas. These are the 4 different theories about why a government is formed, where it comes from. The first theory is born out of control, right? That the people who are in charge, they force their way to being in charge, okay? Or we have the evolutionary theory, that governments evolved over time like a family does, right? Like it was just necessary, so it came to be. We have the divine right theory, that the power was given to God, to those of royal birth, so you are born into it. This is what you see a lot in like monarchies, right? They'll say a certain family was born into power, so they have to stay in power because God chose them to be there. And then we have the social contract theory. This is a star here because this is a theory that most influenced the formation of our government here in the U.S., and that is that there is a contract, right, between human beings agree with each other to create a state. Right, so you give up some of your rights, your absolute freedom, in order to all be protected and to have an equal voice in government. All right, what are the purposes of government? We the people of the United States, in order to blah, blah, blah. All right, so if you are able to know the preamble, which is that first like opening paragraph or thesis statement really of the Constitution, then you can find the purposes of our government here in the United States. The first one, of course, is to form a more perfect union. The first kind of failed attempt at having a national government was the Articles of Confederation. Those didn't work out too well. We'll talk later about why they didn't. And so then we have the Constitution, which we still use today. All right, to establish justice, okay, that we have courts and laws, that we are impartial to law, that it's reasonable, that if you are accused of a crime or not following a law, that you are going to be treated fairly. That we have domestic tranquility. Domestic tranquility here, simply put, is order or peace. That we're all able to get along, that the states can get along with each other, and that things are relatively peaceful. Provide for the common defense. Of course, that means everything from the military, right? I think you have Marines here, and also Homeland Security, police, FBI, all those things, right? The purpose of our government is to make sure that people are safe. All right, promote the general welfare. This is about kind of promoting the common good, that people are being taken care of. For example, schools, okay? Schools, which are a duty of the government, they promote the general welfare. And of course, secure the blessings of liberty, the dedication to freedom for the individual and the state as a whole. This is very much based on patriotism, very much based on the importance that we put on freedom of having the right to believe in what you believe in, to say what you want to say, and to be able to do that without interference from government. All right, now, to help you remember the purposes of government, the purposes of our government here in the United States, the best way to do that is to learn this song, the preamble. And, So if you can sing this song and remember this song, then you will always know the purposes. So we're going to go out here with this song.
called the Preamble, that tells what those founding fathers set out to do. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. 1787, I'm told our founding fathers all sat down and wrote a list of principles that's known the world around. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out. They wanted a land of liberty, and the preamble goes like this. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America, for the United States of America.
Alright, there you go. A little ditty to help you remember the preamble, which also includes, or is really, the principles of the United States government. Okay? So, for your quiz, next time we see you, make sure that you are able to tell us the characteristics of a state. Remember those 4 characteristics: population, territory, sovereignty, and government. And also make sure you're able to tell us the 4 different main theories about how a government is formed: force theory, evolution theory, social contract, and divine right theory. And also make sure that you are familiar with the preamble, all right, or those basic principles of government. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty, and I promise you, if you listen to this song over and over again and this song gets stuck in your head, you will be a principles of government scholar. You'll never forget them. All right, see you in class.